Welcome to Freedom and Perspective. Today we're talking about championing each other.
Yes, it is, especially now in our world today when there's a lot happening and a lot of disagreement on so many different sides. We really need to learn how to love each other, and that love is a powerful force. And we live in the desert, and it is over 100 degrees, well over. So we are trying to hydrate, even though I love coffee and that's not hydration. But anyways, back to love is a powerful force. And
Drink water.
Drink water.
Because I was outside and legitimately almost passed out. It was kind of scary.
Yeah,
Vision
it's a real
went
thing.
dark. Yeah. Anyways, so today, talking about championing people.
Yes.
Love can be a very powerful force.
Yeah.
And love doesn't mean, it's not always comfortable. It's not always easy.
Right, absolutely. And because I think a lot of times right now everybody's like, but this is truth, this is truth. And you're like, ha ha.
Nice.
So we have to, absolutely, we have to remember that truth is only valuable if there's love behind it. If your motivation for giving truth is, ha ha, I'm right and you're wrong, guess what? That's actually not the right mode to go about. I remember I had this pastor who is amazing, and he was awesome. Every week he'd be like, so you offended like 5 people this week. And I was like, but was I wrong? He's like, nope, not one thing you said was wrong. But it was because there was no love behind it. And so I was just like, I don't know. I was, this is a while ago. I learned a lot better of like, hey, communication without love is actually not powerful. And truth without love is just like a clanging gong. Mm-hmm. And that's very biblical, and it's very much, we see it in our world today where people are yelling and screaming at each other, this is truth, this is truth, this is truth. And so really, nobody really knows a ton of truth right now. There's a whole lot going on. But truth without love is just useless, really.
It's like criticism.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side is love without truth is like sentimentality.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, we don't want to like
Right.
coddle or enable or like we need to be speaking truth. So we have a few
Absolutely.
tips of just kind of how to show up for each
Right.
other and champion each other and empower each other.
Right. And the huge part of that is truth and love is so empowering. It allows people to become better versions of themselves. We don't want to become better versions of anybody else. We want to be the best version of ourselves. And we can only see so much of ourselves. We can only see just a very limited view. And so it's helpful to have friends and community and people around us who can speak truth and love into our lives. But that goal is to empower other people. That's the huge part. So we have practical tips to do that. Is the first and foremost is calling people higher. So calling people out and calling people higher is actually not like, oh, you did this wrong, you messed up in this way, you didn't say it this way. Well, it's like, no, actually, it's like, hey, I'm confused that you're, reacting that way because you are actually you're so smart, you're so amazing, and yet you're kind of, not lining up with that. What's going on? So it's asking people, like, what's happening, and it's reminding them that they're so much better than maybe what they're acting of, again, in our friendship. I mean, Sadie's done that to me. I've done that to her. Like, hey, I'm confused by this. You are so much more loving or so much more fun or whatever. And she said that to me and vice versa. And it just takes a minute to, like, remind us who we are sometimes.
Yeah, because we're human. And
Absolutely.
so it's getting to know each other's stories to then kind of understand who we are and remind each other of who we are. So that ties into number 2, which is speaking truth when lies might come. So if you see somebody who's believing a lie about themselves or believing a lie about the situation or doubting and just like not having any hope, we can come to them and be like, hey, this is who you are. Like, you're believing the lie. Don't believe fear. And like, sometimes we get so close that we can't see something. So bringing that perspective to the person you care about and being like, hey.
And reminding, like, truth of, like, I've had moments where I'm like, we all have these moments. If you don't, tell me, and how do you not have these? Because that would be impressive. Anyways, but the moments where I'm like, I feel stupid and ugly, and nobody loves me, and I'm not worthwhile, and then Sadie's like, whatever, knock it off. The truth is, you're a valuable daughter of the King. You have amazing family, you have amazing friends, you have an awesome job, like, knock it off. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, because those lies hit us. That hits me all the time. And so sometimes you can't fight it on your own, and you just need some friends and outside voices to, like, remind you of truth.
Yes. So then our next practical hard word, practical tip is celebrate each other. Oh my gosh, I learned this a long time ago, and I have been so grateful for this. So even like I've had friends that are getting married, friends that have kids, friends that, you know, got an amazing job, or friends that moved to another state or country, and well, those are all things that I would love. I'm not gonna be like, oh man, they did it, so I can never, or like, you can do that, and there might be a valid feeling of that. But again, that's kind of like an Eeyore. Nobody really wants to hang out with Eeyore. Like, oh man. And like, if Sadie responds that way and I'm so excited about something, I don't really want to tell her, because then I feel like it's going to make her feel bad. And then I'm like, but then it just, you know, limits our friendship from actually embracing exciting things and being really fun. But instead, she like champions, like, that's so awesome, that's so exciting. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is right. I can be excited about this, and and it allows me in those celebrated, like in those moments where I'm like, well, it's not that big of a deal, and she's like, wow, that's a huge deal. That's so awesome. And I'm like, oh yeah, like it feels so empowering and so encouraging. And you know, and then again, like my friends who have been married, I'm like, I want to celebrate your marriage because this is beautiful and exciting. Yeah, I'm not married yet, and I desire that someday, but I'm not going to be sad about you getting it and I'm not. Like, that's so counterproductive, and we need to learn to celebrate people in the little things and the big things.
And I think some of the things that stop us from celebrating is comparison.
Yes.
Because then we get in our own heads, and I can be like, oh, think of an example right now. Like, I can just get in my head and also be like, this, I don't have that. And so when I see someone who has something I want, I'm comparing and feeling less than. And so I can't actually celebrate them, because really I'm like, oh. Which is not, you should recognize those feelings. But then again, if comparison steals and kills joy, connection, and it just makes life sucky. So.
Very true.
Very profound words right now.
Very true.
So. Yeah. So then what shatters it is celebrating each other.
Absolutely.
So that goes on to number 4 is having boundaries and standing firm. You can love people and still have boundaries and like know what you need. And sometimes setting boundaries can be difficult, but it shows value for yourself and it shows value for them, and it can call someone higher. If they're not responding well to you, you can be like, hey, I'm not actually going to accept this in my life. I love you. I want you in my life, but this isn't healthy for me. And then they can choose to show up and then still be in your life. So
right. And remember, boundaries communicate value for yourself and other people. They're not big walls to keep people out. They're actually like, it shows people where the door is. So it's like, you can't invade my house from all different, you know, spots, but you can absolutely come in the front door, come in the back door, here's the side door. Like, it just shows people the door, instead of them like taking an axe and chopping down your wall. You'd be like, what are you doing? Why don't you just take the door? So that's really what a boundary is like, no, don't use an axe on my wall, just come through the door.
Yes.
So it's just better access. And part of an awesome boundary for me, that the next practical tip is saying no when you don't want to do something, or when you can't do something, or it's like, hey, I would love to add another dinner this week, but honestly, if I do, it's going to add more stress. And it's like, go. Like, when I have friends that say no, not like no all the time, because then I'm like, well, you just don't want to hang out with me, you don't want to be friends. So there's a whole different level of that. But when you say no, and I know you're like considering it, but you're like, I honestly, for myself, have to say no, because it's just going to be more stressful because I've had a long week, or I have a lot going on, or I would love to be there and I would love to spend time with you, but I can't this time. For me, I'm like, wow, I feel safe to know that when I can't, I can say no, and you're going to feel like it's not going to be a personal attack. It's going to be like an understanding friendship or relationship or whatever. Family member, or whatever that is like, you say no, that gives me space and safety to say no, and then I can actually also trust your word. Like, we have a friend that I'm like, I have no idea if you're just being really nice and you don't want to do any of this stuff and you don't really want to stand up for yourself, or if you actually want to do this. Like, I'm like, I don't actually know, and then it doesn't make it as fun for me, because I'm like, I don't know if you actually want to be here. Like, if you don't want to be here, that's okay. You're allowed to stay home or go do something else, but I want you to be honest with me. And so saying no for me is really huge.
That's trust.
It does.
You
Yes.
trust the word.
Yes.
And then number 6 is being brave enough to have honest conversations with each other.
Woo! Yes. Be
So-
vulnerable.
Yes. And willing to like go, tread into awkward conversations where you're like, this is going to be really uncomfortable because who wants to bring up not great feelings or, hey, you hurt me, or hey, this part,
Yeah.
So, but being willing to do that, because when you can have those conversations, it can build deeper intimacy within your friendships, dating relationships, marriage. anything.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I think
brave.
of the time that
oh no.
we got in a fight, and I think it was the dumbest fight. I don't even know if there was like a point of the fight. Like, we were in the kitchen and we both got really upset, and it's usually because we're just not hearing each other and we're trying to like make sure the other one is fine with how the other one is feeling instead of just saying what we're saying. And I honestly don't remember what the fight is. I think it was something super dumb. But I got super frustrated, and Sadie got frustrated, and we like went opposite, and I was like, whatever, I'm leaving. I had a event or something that I was like, I'm just gonna leave, I'm just done. So I get in my car and I like start to leave, and I'm leaving. We're both pissed. And I'm like, get to the end of the street, and I feel like God is like, is she valuable enough as a friend to like have this hard conversation? And I was like, dang it. I was like, So I like turn around the car and I drive back in the home, and I like knock at her door. I said, we're gonna finish this fight. And she's like, what? Fine, okay, we're gonna fight. I was like, all right. I mean, we didn't like yell and scream and like physically fight, but like we were in a disagreement. But it took me, and it was like, it took both of us to be like, okay, well, yeah, we're gonna have this communication, because like we even said later, like, we're so glad we had that conversation, because it would have ruined our nights. We would have been like just frustrated at each other, but instead we ended up having a really fun night and going to like an event at the zoo.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, be brave enough to have the really hard conversations and press into people that you're like, hey, these are my friends, these are my family members, this is my relationship, like, I love them, and I want to grow closer, and it is hard and vulnerable to feel those feelings and say them out loud of like, hey, I felt disrespected or unheard, or, again, I don't remember what the fight was about, probably was nothing important, but the fact that we, like, pressed through and, like, had the conversation when... instead of just being like refusing to have the conversation.
Yeah.
So.
Because it's worth it. Because we're not called to just make each other comfortable. Because if I'm like, oh, I just want you to be comfortable, then I'm in my head with all of my feelings and thoughts. But then there's no actual like connection. So don't be afraid of conflict.
Right.
Again, there's tools to learn to have better conflict and like healthy conflict. But having conflict isn't bad. That's a human thing, and that's how we grow. So
absolutely, having constant conflict is bad.
Yes.
So I think we'll probably do a video on how to fight well and how to have conflict well, because there is a balance and there is a way to do it, and we don't do it perfectly. And I think we have an example pretty recently where I did not do it perfectly, but then I had to come back and be like, okay, cool, we're gonna try this again. And so having grace for yourself, but really recognizing like all of these points are love is a powerful force. Love is not easy. Love is a choice every second, every minute, every day. Love is a choice. We choose to love people or we choose not to. And we don't have to agree with them to love them. We don't have to see exactly eye to eye to stand with them. But we also can like love them with truth and speak truth and not enable them to stay in like unhealthy toxic patterns, but also we can't control other people. So, there's this balance, but we want to love and champion each other and celebrate each other for who they are, who God created them to be, because we're all very unique and different and amazing in our own ways.
So yeah, it's about connection and understanding each other. So if you listen to our last video, it's about hearing each other. So very key in conflict.
Very key.
Listen.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
And drink some more.